The US dollar has no value.
Oil prices surprisingly steady overnight, or is it surprising?
If oil hits $300 a barrel, this is how life could change for the United States and everyone in it.
Haven't we seen enough chaos when it comes to inflation? Now, with oil prices spiking, prices at the pump are not just going up, it's prices on everyday consumer goods that are being impacted due to this war between Iran on one side, and their proxies, of course, and the United States and Israel on the other side. News just came out that the other NATO nations don't want any parts of it. They're not stupid, right? They know not to get involved in it. And at the end of the day, what we're seeing right now is the utter destruction of the American economy, no matter what side of the aisle you stand on, because there are many people who will watch this video or will be in this comment section that would say things like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. We're doing a great thing. We're removing a deadly power. But on the other side of the fence, what we're seeing right now is Russia, China, India, and South Africa, as well as Iran, just gearing up right now, and they're positioning themselves in a better situation where they're weakening America. They don't really have to have the most advanced military, and I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But guys, I want to show you these clips. I want you to look at them very, very carefully, because what you're about to see, okay, from these people who have done their own research or just people who have been reporting on things, is mind blowing. And I really think it's going to lead to the utter destruction of the American economy. Roll the clips.
Oil prices surprisingly steady overnight, or is it surprising? I mean, let's just look at this. As it stands, oil prices have gone up from $60 to $100, which is a 40% increase, whilst the chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz, which supplies 20% of the global oil supply each day, remains in place. But the IEA and global Western governments have committed up to 400 million barrels, which the bottom line is this, and I keep saying it and I'll just keep saying it. This is a game of time frames. If we're talking about weeks until the Strait of Hormuz starts to have meaningful traffic again, then oil prices are way too high. If we're talking about months and further disruptions to critical production facilities in the Middle East, then of course oil prices may well be too low in the short term. These questions are yet to be answered. What is very clear is the market is still looking through this situation. Yes, we've seen volatility. Yes, we've seen some drawdowns in the economically sensitive stuff. Yes, we've seen analysts start to try and pencil in scenarios of cutting EPS assumptions. But then again, you've got Morgan Stanley out this morning, Mike Wilson saying it's time to buy the market. Equity sell-off has been too aggressive. Bearing in mind, I just would say I've got a lot of respect for Mike Wilson, but he's for obvious reasons. But he also has gone from being a max bear for 3 years during one of the biggest bull market runs to now a max bull. So nonetheless, that is the kind of vibe of strategists, right? They've been mown over so many times for being bearish that they kind of just have to be bullish now. Nonetheless, the sentiment is poor, but it's really interesting to note the likes of JP Morgan, the likes of Goldman, the likes of Morgan Stanley, in other words, the top 3 investment banks in the world, are all basically saying buy the dip. So it's a very strange situation, to say the least, because again, if this suddenly de-escalates over the next couple of weeks, given the sentiment, given the positioning, which acts as a springboard for equities, there will be a massive rally, no doubt. Now, I hedged up the book on Friday. I've reduced the QQQ short. That's now gone. So I've now focused on the Russell Index and the SPY are my shorts, which are my hedges in the book. I've added back to Oracle again. I'll probably add back a little bit later. I'm playing this as it comes, right? If you're managing money, if you're managing risk, you've got to take it as it comes, and you've got to remain hedged in a situation like this. Nonetheless, the market's intentions are relatively clear. But we need to wait and find out more about the Strait of Hormuz and about whether or not that traffic can start getting going in the next couple of weeks. And that is anyone's guess at this stage. So we take it as it comes. Speak soon.
And there's the power play, folks. The Iranian government announced that they will consider allowing ships to pass the Strait of Hormuz if oil is traded in yuan, in Chinese currency. Is this the end of the petrodollar and American dominance and hegemony in the world? Who knows? The idiocy, the lack of foresight that Trump and his administration and the greedy oil barons that he serves and the industrial military complex has the tables churn on them. Will it work? Your guess is as good as mine. Anyways, what do you think about this? Will it work?
Should you be worried about the war? What's gonna happen to my money? Should I convert pesos to dollars? Buy gold? Should I sell my investments? I've been getting a lot of these questions from clients, friends, and family, and allow me to share my perspective. We've seen this before. Past oil price shocks and war times have been happening. For example, 2025, we had the Israel-Iran war. 2003, the Gaza war. 2022, Russia-Ukraine war. 2003, Iraq war. 1990, Gulf war, and the list goes on. And what we've noticed is that during these times, it would not serve investors to panic sell or make any drastic changes. Because after an initial price shock, everyone gets worried, markets drop, only the ones who are well positioned, not panic buying or selling, they're the ones who are able to enjoy the recovery that comes afterwards. So we tell clients, I am telling my friends now that it's a time to take it easy and review your portfolio. If it's already a diversified portfolio, you're probably better off letting it stay there and be able to run its course because it's built to weather through the storms. If you're under invested, meaning you have all of your money in cash, might be a good time to start putting money into the market. But if you have too much in the market already and you realize that this is way beyond what you can actually tolerate or your risk tolerance, now might be a good time to revisit and pare it down. As for other things like the US dollar peso, what we've noticed is that foreign exchange markets are even worse and more volatile and tend to lose money for people who try to trade those. And as for gold, actually, the past few weeks, it actually hasn't been doing its job as a diversifier. And what we've noticed is because of the strong performance last year, the past few weeks hasn't really been, essentially been flattish for gold. So what we'd like to focus on instead are buying income-producing assets, things like stocks and bonds that will continue to do well, whether before, during, or after these war times and oil price shocks. Hope that helps.
If oil hits $300 a barrel, this is how life could change for the United States and everyone in it. With oil being blocked, most people think that just our gas is going to go up, but in fact, oil is essential in things like medicine, energy, and everything else pretty much in the world. If oil hits $300 a barrel, which they are predicting it will, gas prices could go up to $15 per gallon, and medicine could almost double or triple the cost that it is now. But that is just one domino that will fall. Families will start to have to make hard choices. Now, to understand all of this, you need to know that America's superpower is not its military. It's the dollar. After World War II, the United States made a deal where all oil around the world gets bought with the US dollar. This is what is called the petrodollar. Every country that needs oil needs to buy it in dollars, and this is what keeps the United States on top. Now, with the recent conflict, they are blocking oil on purpose. They want to essentially topple our economy. Now, Iran is not the only country that wants to topple the US dollar. There's plenty of other countries that do as well. These are called the BRICS countries, and they have unified, and they want a gold-backed standard instead of a US dollar standard. Most people don't know that the US dollar standard has only been around since the late 1940s. Every single currency throughout the history of time has always been turned over or toppled. Every single one. Now, while you have all this going on, Wall Street is also sitting on a time bomb. The stock market is being propped up by the AI bubble. These are not AI profits, it's just all hype. If the AI bubble pops, it is bad news for most people. Most retirement accounts will basically go to almost zero, and the US will be in a very, very bad situation. Now, this is where Ray Dalio comes in. If you don't know Ray Dalio, he was a very successful investor, but he also wrote a book called The Changing of the World Order. What he talks about is that every 75 to 100 years, there's a changing in the world power. Right now, we've been a world power for a little over 100 years, and he has said that we are basically at the end of the timeline. It happens to everybody. Britain, Holland, and just keep going back through time. Every superpower eventually topples. It's not a prediction anymore, it's a pattern. Now, the scary part is that all three of these things are about to topple at the same time. Oil, the stock market, and the dollar. Now, to make matters worse, they have started hitting desalination plants. Desalination plants are critical in order for water supply. If you heard, there was an attempted attack or a drone attack on California on our desalination plants. They're going to go after our most critical resources via cyber attack, via natural resources, so you need to be prepared. This is what I would do to prepare. If you don't have a stockpile of any sort of common medicines for you, for your kids, that is what I would stock up on immediately. Additionally, get food supplies for the next few months. That is what you're going to need, and get some cash saved away. That vacation that you were thinking about taking, I would double think that, because the prices of AC, air conditioning, are going to go up dramatically. We're going to have a very hot summer here in the United States, and the price of oil is going to go up to $300 a barrel. Now, we use 40% oil to power our energy supply here in the United States. So the prices of everything are about to go through the roof. You need to be prepared, and you need a backup plan.
Look what happened in the last 2 weeks. They weren't supposed to go after all these other countries in the Middle East. Those missiles were set to go after them. So they hit Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait. Nobody expected that. We were shocked.
So, I'm nobody. I even put the name tag on because I'm nobody. This is me 2 weeks before the war started in Iran.
We get into this conflict if instead of, confronting the United States directly, they point their weapons to other nations in the area to try to kind of make it a much broader conflict and create a lot of disruption and chaos.
So which is more likely? That nobody knew it, or that he simply ignored some of the greatest military minds in the world that he's surrounded by? Thanks. Okay, take a look at this chart. I'm going to show it to you. Tell you exactly what this is, okay? This yellow shaded area here is the start and end date of the OPEC 2020 deal, of Donald Trump's OPEC 2020 deal. The blue line is oil prices, and the red line is inflation. Now, as you can see, it all started here at the beginning of the OPEC 2020 deal, and it all ended at the end of the OPEC 2020 deal. Now, this is the part I want to address. Oil doesn't cause inflation. Expansion of the monetary base does. Thanks. Now, they say this because they want to blame Joe Biden's COVID pandemic relief on the inflation, even though we're supposed to believe Donald Trump's pandemic relief did nothing to inflation. Here's the problem with that assertion. This right here is where the pandemic relief started. Yeah, all the way up here. Now, as far as oil prices not being able to cause inflation, why has every oil price spike in history caused massive inflation? The 73 oil embargo, oil prices more than tripled, inflation went to 12%. The 79 oil shock, where oil prices nearly tripled, inflation went to 15%. When oil prices spiked at the end of the Bush administration, inflation jumped to 6%. When oil prices spiked under Biden, inflation went to over 9%. Now, I'm not saying other things didn't contribute, but if you look at every dip and jump on these two lines, they match together like Legos. Thanks!
Why are gas prices going up? If you think it's because of the war in the Middle East, you're getting tricked. We never imported oil from the Middle East in the first place. The US is a net exporter of oil, which means we produce more oil than we use. So then why are gas prices going up? It's because oil companies see the news headlines and they see an opportunity for exploitation. They're not raising prices because they're struggling to survive. They're raising prices to take advantage of the situation, which is why their stocks and their profits have been going up like crazy. Another reminder that late stage capitalism ain't it, and we need to get rid of the influence corporations have in our society, our economy, and our politics.
The US dollar has no value. It's not backed against gold or silver. What the U.S. has is the petrodollar. The U.S. worked out deals to make the U.S. dollar the international currency for oil trade across the globe. So if we are not trading oil in dollars, the U.S. has a major problem because our dollar has no value without the strength of the petrodollar. Our government would collapse if people stopped trading in USD with oil. So when Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz, they made alluding to that, they said, hey, if your oil and liquid natural gases are not being traded in USD, any other currency, especially the Chinese yuan, with the rise of BRICS, we'll let your ships through. They are actively trying to devalue the United States dollar because they understand that if oil is not being traded in USD, the US dollar is worth nothing because it's not backed against anything. This is also why we went into Venezuela. In case y'all didn't know, Maduro was going to start selling oil to China, but using the yuan. He was going to stop using USD. And that's when the decision was made very quickly to go in and take him out of power and try to get American oil companies to Venezuela to take over oil extraction and processing there to keep it in USD. Because if we start losing those trades using the US dollar, we lose value of our dollar, which will cause an economic collapse or at least a massive recession. So now Trump is panicking and demanding that other countries send military aid to the Strait of Hormuz to make sure we can open it up and get it all open. And but we also already destroyed their military, so you guys, don't have to worry. We've already taken out their whole everything. But they might have put mines, so we just need you guys to come and help us out. Why can't y'all handle that? Why do you need other countries to handle that? No, you know that if other countries start to go into an energy crisis because oil isn't moving, if they have to buy oil in a different currency, they will, just to get the oil to their country. And I think this is why Trump wants other countries to get involved to try to keep the status quo. But a lot of the countries are saying, absolutely not. We are not going to get involved, even if they don't realize it's about the petrodollar, but they will not get involved as of now. This is really concerning. And this is sad also that Iran is playing a really smart game that Trump and his team had no idea they would play. I do think people were aware that Iran had these cards to play, but somehow it eluded Trump and his whole entire team. But this is a major concern for the longevity of the United States, especially with the cost of this war, how much money we're spending on this war, especially when you hear that we've been borrowing $50 billion a week for the last 5 months. That means we're going to have to pay that money back, or we're going to have to pay back the interest. It's all of a mess. So much money is just being thrown around by the U.S. We're just hemorrhaging money everywhere. But if the US dollar loses value, we have to pay even more in interest. Not just us as consumers, but the government itself. That means our dollar, that $1 trillion of debt, would suddenly get higher because the $1 trillion USD doesn't matter anymore because it will be so devalued. So this is a major issue, and I don't know if it can be resolved. Iran has made it clear this is on their terms. And, the more Trump keeps talking about, the Strait of Hormuz is open, it's not. Some ships have already tried to go through and got blown up when you said it was safe. So now nobody wants to move. And insurance companies are not insuring those boats. So you have to wait for the insurance companies to insure the boats before people are going to want to move their boats. And now we also have a problem of oil production has been shut down in a lot of these Gulf countries, the Middle Eastern countries, because they have nowhere to put it because boats aren't moving. And it takes weeks to months to get those processes back running again once you turn them off. So I don't think Trump ever had a plan to mitigate this, let alone knew what he was doing or what Iran was capable of. But I do think they're starting to realize with this move, this is just a statement, whether Iran's actually doing it or not, if you're trading in anything but USD, other than that, you can go through. I think they're starting to realize what the game is, what Iran is trying to do. And Iran could very, very, very easily be successful in devaluing the US dollar since it's backed in nothing. But we'll see what happens. I doubt we'll get the truth on American news, but this is just me on my hunch. Y'all have a good day.
What is the end goal of the United States and Israel? What's the end goal? You just saw in these videos just now a varying degree of opinions but also a lot of facts sprinkled within. And a lot of these opinions and facts seem to overlap in certain ways. Sure, there were different angles that different people took, specifically on why the U.S. is going to war, how they can benefit, all the way to like the fact that they felt it was necessary to avoid Iran becoming more powerful than they already are to some degree with the support of China and Russia. But just in general, what is the end goal? I think it's money. It's a no-brainer, right? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that it's all about the wealth. It's all about the control of the oil. We just heard one of them mention the petrodollar. That's where that term comes from. The fact that the United States had control the petrol industry, the oil industry for many years. They don't have to physically be drumming up the oil themselves to control it because they have the power of the dollar and the power of their military to help to control that. And we can understand why. I mean, can you really blame the United States? Sure, it's not necessarily the most humane and the most diplomatic thing to do, but can you really blame them for putting themselves in the position so they cannot be challenged financially or militarily from another country, or by another country rather? They put themselves in a situation where they can't really be challenged to a point where they can be a threat, or the nation who is trying to attack them could be perceived as a threat. And what we're seeing right now is the total unraveling of many decades of utter control by the United States on other nations, the embargoes and the various sanctions they put on other countries in an effort to impede their own growth. This is what we're seeing right now. And many people are just totally baffled by what's happening. But as you just saw, okay, in this image that I just showed you at the very top of this, it's crazy to see the spike that has happened. The spike, and I'll just put that up again right here so you can see it. The spike of the oil prices, and since last year, just since 2025. I mean, it's like a 40 to 50% increase depending on where in the world you are. It's just baffling what kind of spike we've seen here. And we've seen this in the past. Sure, we have. Sure. But that is not a great excuse in the days and times where inflation is already out of control and many Americans are feeling it. Hell, many Europeans are feeling the impact of inflation. Sure, it may not be as extreme as it is in the United States, but still many Europeans are feeling the pressures that they are feeling every day at the pump. They're feeling it at the supermarkets. They're feeling it when they go to pay, for a medical procedure. They're feeling it all around the board. So to what end must it go before we realize that we need to have a plan B? As citizens of our countries, we need to be prepared in the event that something escalates to the point of no return. And that's what I'm preparing for with my own family. I've got a few things lined up and, a few options, to say the least. A lot of my friends circle, they're doing the same thing. And only the smartest people will do this. And I know that there's a lot of people out there, especially within the FBA community, the FBA being Foundational Black American community, who would say, well, you're just fleeing if you prepare. If you have a plan B, you're just fleeing the nation and you're a coward. You know what? I guess I'd just be a coward then. I guess I'll just be a coward, right? I don't really give a darn what anybody says, because at the end of the day, I need to protect my family and my assets, okay? My financial assets, that is. I need to protect my family and my financial assets because you never know what might happen. And people, if they want to be gullible and dumb about it, and if they want to just fight a battle that they'll never win in terms of fighting against the government, then go ahead. More power to you. You're not going to win that battle. The battle that you could win is a battle of intelligence, a battle of IQ, a battle of essentially integrity also, because what's happening right now, many will perceive to be a violation of not only international law, but a violation of human rights. And again, it's not me to say that the US government did a bad thing or a good thing. That's for you to perceive. What I'm doing is just relaying the facts. And again, as you've heard me say a gazillion times before, this is reality check, and therefore we must check our reality. And the reality is fairly grim. We are in a state of war. We are probably already in World War III. You know, some people think that World War III started from the very first bomb that US and Israel dropped on Iran. I think it started earlier than that. Just my opinion. I think that World War III started essentially when we started making threats, verbal threats against certain nations, right? We started already saying, well, we're going after nations that have nuclear. I think that that was already a triggering point because those nations that do have nuclear weapons, they perceive that to be a threat casted by the United States leadership. And at the end of the day, what are they to do? They are to either create more weapons to protect themselves and their vested interest, or they are to throw more verbal shots back at the United States. Because at the end of the day, many of these nations are not scared of us. They're not. Trust me, if they were, you may say, well, they're scared of us because they have, nuclear weapons, but that's not really being scared. That's just being protective and safeguarding what your nation produces and safeguarding the sovereignty of your nation. You want to make sure that in the event that one of these countries, like the United States or Israel, essentially in this case, were to attack, you won't be caught slipping out there, basically, in street terms. You won't be, they won't catch you slipping, okay? And that's exactly what you want to do. You want to protect and safeguard your sovereignty. You want to make sure that, you can thrive as a nation. You can do trade, whether fair trade or unfair trade in general. You want to do that with other nations and you want to, prosper. And unfortunately, we being the United States, the red, white, and blue, we still live in a day and time where we want to control everything. It's all about dominance. And I understand, again, wholeheartedly, I understand exactly why the U.S. is doing it. But we must call a spade a spade. What do you think eventually would happen in any case when the United States of America continues to do the same juggling act of getting involved in other people's business, brown-nosing themselves in based on certain friendships that they have with certain nations? What do you think is going to happen when we keep butting ourselves into their business? Eventually, they're going to retaliate because they look at it as, well, you're standing against us and we're not for you. So therefore, we have a problem with each other. And now, this is again nuts what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that Russia, for example, and it wasn't covered in any of these videos, by the way, I'm hearing that Russia is secretly providing the weapons to Iran to fight against the United States. Now, let me ask you a question, guys. What do you think? What in the hell do you think is going to happen if this is true and is proven? There could be two possibilities. Dos. Okay? Numero uno. Trump might just kind of blow it over and say, you know what, Putin's my friend, we get along so well. Yeah, I don't believe that. That's all fake news. I don't think that Putin's supplying weapons because it seems like Trump is very fond of Putin. He has a really strong affinity for Putin. That's number one. Number two, if he is challenged by the media or by members of his administration or by members of the Democrats, and they were to mention that, hey, Russia, your buddy over there, he's supplying weapons to your enemy. So what do you think about that? He, being egotistical as he is, he will probably say, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling that. As a result of that, I'm going to put even more sanctions on Russia. That's the most likely route he's going to go. And this is going to spell trouble if he does this. And this is going to be the end of it all. He might get so big-headed that he says, you know what? They are supplying weapons to my enemies. The hell with Russia. We're going to go after you now. Or we're going to supply weapons to Ukraine now. Since you're giving weapons to them, we're going to start giving weapons to Ukraine again. Okay? And how do you like them apples? And if that happens, guys, I want to let you know that if that happens, start packing your bags, start planning where you're going to go in the world. I have a few places I'm thinking of. I'm not going to say it right now because then it won't give me an opportunity to go there. Start packing your bags, start figuring out exactly where in the world you're going to go, because that will be the damn end of it all. As soon as Russia enters the field, it's not, if people are worried about China, let me tell you something. China is actually being quite more diplomatic. Okay, they're being quite diplomatic. But once Russia gets involved, we have a strong man in Putin, and he's not going to take that lion down very easily. He's going to say something, or he's going to retaliate. And it's quite natural. Again, what these other world leaders are doing, it doesn't take a rocket scientist, guys. It does not. At the end of the day, they want to safeguard their own nations. Sure, a lot of them may go through shady practices to do it, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. Safeguard their nations. Also, to profit a little bit from it as well, as call a spade a spade. They are trying to profit from it as well, like the United States. The difference, I think the main difference between the United States and them is that they do it less sloppily. The United States is very sloppy in how they handle these scenarios with, kind of like this, not colonization, but essentially modern day imperialism. Them going in and taking resources from certain nations. They do it very sloppy. They think they're slick, but they're not very slick, because the average American viewer of the media, or the American public in general, is quite smarter than what they used to be, because we live in a day and age where we're being bombarded with media, whether true or false media. We have access to artificial intelligence, which is telling us exactly what's happening, whether that's true or false. But we also now, due to the internet, have access to international media and independent media domestically that tells us exactly what's happening. So we are able to then deduce our own sort of thoughts and opinions on what's happening. And all of these things will start to converge at some point. And at the end of the day, what's happening right now is essentially the start of something monumental, and that's not in a good way. Okay, it's the beginning of something that is coming down the pipe that is going to change the world forever. And I don't know when that exactly will happen. All I know is that if China continues to go forward with their plan of securing the Strait of Hormuz through their currency, that all trades must be done in their Chinese currency, that is going to trigger the United States. Because up to now, the petrodollar, as they had mentioned, has been essentially the new gold standard. And now that we're, or Iran is changing the currency to the Chinese currency, that's going to cause the US to pretty much flip the script, and there will be retaliation against China. And China will definitely defend itself. And then, of course, Russia will get involved because, China and Russia are pretty much buddies. And there's another little man, a little chubby man, that's sitting somewhere in a country named North Korea by the name of Kim Jong-un. And I know he has a really good relationship with the BRICS nations as well. So, guys, I mean, again, these times are definitely uncertain. Stay safe out there. Protect your family. Start planning your plan B right now. Get all your affairs in order. Don't be stupid or silly about it. Don't listen to other influences out there who call you a coward for wanting to leave the country or seek other opportunities elsewhere within the country. Don't be foolish, because trust me when I tell you, these same people who are telling you that you're a coward for leaving or that you're fleeing will be the very damn first ones on the plane when something hits. They'll be the first ones, because they're not going to want to go down like that, especially with all their wealth. It would be foolish to, get your head chopped off for something crazy like that. It's crazy. So look, do as I say. Stay safe out there. Don't trust the entire media. Cherry pick what you hear. Try to find a line of convergence between everything you're listening to. Because at the end of the day, we need to gather as many primary, secondary, and tertiary resources as we possibly can and make sense of it all. That's the hardest part, is to make sense of everything you hear, because you can't believe the CNNs and the Fox Newses and the BBCs and the CBCs, depending on where you are. You can't trust 100% everything you hear. But if you're able to pick 4 or 5 different resources, including some independent media resources, and find a line of convergence, find a line of intersect. Where is it intersecting? What makes sense right now for my current situation, for my family situation? Where will we be in 5 to 10 years if we remain within the country? Where could we be if we leave the country and go to a place that has greener pastures? Where can we go, right? Where am I able to put my kids into school? What about finances? What can I do? All right. These are the things you need to start thinking about now, guys. So please take my words, heed them, please put them into action, and hopefully you'll have your plan B all sorted out. And if stuff hits the fan, you know exactly where to duck and hide. Guys, if you like this video right here, show me some love, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more. YouTube thinks you'll like this video right here. Go ahead and give that a click, and I'll see you on the next one.